I'm Scott Lucas. This is EA's Worldview on Syria. Earlier this month, the United States government, for the first time, said it would provide weapons to the Syrian insurgency. However, since then, rather than providing clarity on what's happening, there has been confusion over whether the insurgency is indeed receiving significant weapons, and if so, how they're going to use them. How do we begin to understand not only the military developments, but the political developments on what is being seen as a possible game changer in the Syrian conflict? Here's our three-point guide. Point 1, the background. The story behind the U.S. announcement goes back several months. In the middle of 2012, the United States considered for the first time working with other countries to provide weapons to the opposition against the Assad regime. A command center was set up in Turkey to consider the groups who might receive the weapons and to consider what might be given to them. Not only the United States was involved, but of course the Turks, Arab countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, European countries like Britain and France. The problem is that those countries could not really agree on who the good insurgents were and who the bad insurgents were, the so-called extremists. What's more, there's a very fluid military situation in the northern part of Syria. There were no clear battle lines on exactly which group was controlling which section, or might control which section of the country. So the effort to move arms across Turkey, at least in the sense of an organized effort, stalled out by late 2012. But then a second phase occurred. At the end of 2012, the countries involved, the United States, Arab countries, Britain and France, set up another command center in Jordan. In this case, the weapons would be put not into the northern part of Syria, but into the southern part of Syria. That effort continued throughout the early part of 2013 into supplying a variety of arms, some of them from former Baltic states, some of them from other conflicts, reaching groups across the southern part of Syria all the way to the outskirts of Damascus. But by spring of 2013, this covert effort ran into the same questions that occurred months earlier. Was it the good guys who were being supported? After all, some insurgents were filmed with these weapons, taking UN peacekeepers hostage. And perhaps most importantly, the United States and its allies could not really agree on who ultimately would take power in Syria. So point 2, where are we now? At one level, the story is simply talking about providing open weapons supply and covering up that political dispute. The Saudis want to provide arms to a wide variety of insurgents. The Americans aren't so sure. Britain and France are caught in the middle. So recently, we've had an interesting division. There have been complaints from the insurgents weapons are not being provided from Jordan, so they are not reaching vital battlegrounds like the city of Daraa in the south or the Damascus suburbs. On the other hand, there is a significant amount of weapons that are coming in across the Turkish frontier, whether as part of a coordinated effort or whether because the Saudis and the Qataris have said enough is enough. Those weapons are making a difference as insurgents fight across the north of the country, and most importantly, as they fight inside Syria's largest city, Aleppo. We do not have a single coordinated effort, but a muddled one right now. Will this be resolved? Point 3, the big political question. At the end of the day, we can look at video of Russian concourse anti-tank missiles. We can look at Croatian weapons. We can look at Chinese weaponry. But all of this video won't take us to the big question, which is there a single opposition which is being supported? Because the answer to that is no, and that's where the problems arise. Islamist, that derogatory term, will receive weapons, whether they are directly given to them or whether they are basically passed around the opposition. So-called terrorist groups like Jabhat al-Nusra will get some of these weapons. A variety of groups with different religious approaches, different secular approaches, different ideas about the future of Syria will receive these arms. That's why the Americans are nervous. That's why they continue to try to hold back the Saudis, the Qataris, and to an extent, the European countries. Because beyond the reality that there is no single opposition, no single political or military opposition, the big question remains. If you provide these weapons, and if they do indeed force President Assad from power, who takes his place? No one knows. No one knows if it will be another element from the regime, like Assad's own military leaders, some of his political underlings, or if indeed the opposition moves into Damascus, which group or groups will try to take control. It is that lack of clarity, that lack of being able to say this is the end game, that is beyond all the disputes, all the confusion over weaponry. And until we get to some type of political vision as to what happens in Syria, confusion and muddle will continue. I'm Scott Lucas, and this has been our 3-point guide, our EA worldview on Syria.